As the tragedy in Ukraine continues to unfold, all my thoughts and sympathies are with the Ukrainian people resisting the invasion and those seeking to protect their families. And I want our government to do everything it can to help these people. You just have to ask this question. Why is this government brought into power on the back of a Russian-funded Brexit campaign, a Tory party in government that has received millions of pounds of donations from Russian billionaires, taking so long to sanction Russian billionaires? Stay tuned. If you enjoy these videos, please hit the like button, subscribe and click the bell for notifications of new videos every Saturday. Edward Lee is a Brexit jihadist and the Tory MP for Gainsborough in Lincolnshire, the most Brexity part of Brexit land. Speaking in Parliament supporting Home Secretary Prithla Patel's plans to maintain much tougher restrictions than the EU for refugees fleeing the war in Ukraine, here's what he had to say about what he calls mass immigration from Eastern Europe.
I think we have to remember that unlike the rest of Europe, we have uniquely liberal labour laws and we speak English, so we are the country of choice for mass immigration. And therefore, I do urge her to, as well as listen to all these humanitarian voices, to listen to the voices of people, for instance, in Lincolnshire, where we feel we've done really our bit in terms of migration from Eastern Europe, where we're under extreme pressure in terms of housing and jobs. I know this is difficult to say, but we have to be honest about this. And may I therefore be a correcting voice in this and congratulate her on her humanitarian but proportionate response and not throwing away the immigration rulebook.
Can you imagine being as well paid, privileged and comfortable as this literally gammon-coloured pompous windbag, thinking that in your part of Little England you'd already done your bit for Eastern Europeans and shouldn't now be expected to do any more? He's almost as bad as the Prithla herself, whose own refugee-stroke-economic migrant parents wouldn't have been allowed into the UK under her draconian rules for entry. That said, her father subsequently became a candidate for UKIP under Nigel Farage, so maybe that's not the best example to justify a more humanitarian approach to refugees. Patel's plans for a temporary relaxation in visa requirements come with many predicates, contained in 2 lengthy documents published by her Home Office this week. I've read them, so you don't have to, but they are the incarnation of Theresa May's hostile environment, boosted by the steroid of Priti Patel's maliciousness. Patel justifies retaining the restrictions detailed in these Home Office documents on the grounds that extremists and Russian agents may pose as a 73-year-old female refugee with a weak bladder, arthritis and a heart condition. Responding to the 37 Tory MPs who wrote to Boris Johnson demanding that the UK shares equal responsibility with other European countries, Patel claimed her policy was evolving and promised further announcements. But nothing has really changed. At the same time, Immigration Minister Kevin Foster set out plans for Ukrainians without family in the UK to be allowed entry, but only if they sign up to be a fruit picker or take another menial job where the UK has a shortage of labour. Meanwhile, the European Union has set out a plan promising support to everyone fleeing the war in Ukraine and protection for all asylum seekers. The EU has taken 500,000 refugees so far, providing protection for between 1 and 3 years, including residency permits and access to welfare. But Ben Wallace, our Defence Minister, told the Today programme on Radio 4 this week that Britain has led the way on the Ukrainian refugee crisis. If it wasn't so dishonest, populist statements like this would be hilarious. This type of gaslighting seems to infuse everything this Tory government does. Why do we always have to be leading the way for our allies or achieving world-beating this, that and the other? First of all, none of it's true. And even if it were, it would be totally irrelevant. It's not a competition. This is not a time for electioneering or boasting. This is a time for working alongside our European friends to ensure safety and protection for all Ukrainian refugees. And it's not just me, a woke Ramona Pinko lefty, who feels this way. This approach is far more in tune across the UK with the will of the people, to coin a phrase. A YouGov poll this week shows that 50% of the general population feel there is a moral obligation to offer asylum to all Ukrainians fleeing the war, against 32% that do not. 2/3 of Labour voters agree we have a moral obligation, whereas less than half of even Tory voters think it's fine that we turn our backs on these desperate people. This puts the government in a bind, as it begins to realise that the UK population as a whole, and even Tory voters, are nowhere near as vicious and evil as government ministers are themselves. This explains why, in the words of SNP spokesman Stuart MacDonald, the Home Office is having to be dragged towards a generous and comprehensive response instead of a shambolic and miserly mess. And adding to that mess is the fact that the Tories appear to be protecting their donors by delaying sanctions on Russian oligarchs. The EU, Canada and the USA are acting much faster and wider on sanctions than the UK, who have as yet failed to issue sanctions against any oligarchs with significant UK assets. The 8 oligarchs with ties to Putin so far sanctioned are based abroad and will be little affected by the sanctions imposed by the Johnson government. Those based in the UK may be on a promised government hit list, but every day that passes is an opportunity for these Putin enablers to take their assets out of the country. Priti Patel blames legal reasons and says it may take weeks or months to sanction these UK resident Russian oligarchs. Others suspect that her party is returning financial and other favours given to it in the past by this exact same group of individuals. The UK government has also granted one of Moscow's biggest banks, VTB, an inexplicable 30-day exemption from an assets freeze, which of course means that at the end of that 30-day period, any assets in VTB individual accounts will be long gone. So it appears that this is what the successful Russian-backed Brexit campaign and subsequent donations to the Tory party and government may have been all about. Congratulations, Brexiteers. It appears those Russian oligarchs are not the only Putin enablers in Britain.